Hello, everyone, and welcome to your horoscope for the week of January the 15th till 21st, 2024. We have quite an important and almost historic week ahead of us. Of course, mainly from an astrological, karmic, energetic perspective. But of course, there is a very big chance for collective events to mirror this as well. Maybe not necessarily this week, but in the weeks that follow, it can play out over the course of time. Yet still, it is very, very important because we as a collective have reached an important milestone. And of course, I'm speaking about Pluto entering into the sign of Aquarius on Sunday, on the 21st, so the very end of the week. And this is going to represent a major energy shift. Also, because Pluto is doing this uh, dance with the sun. So it's Pluto and the sun leaving Capricorn and entering Aquarius almost simultaneously together. Of course, with a bit of a minute difference, so to speak, yet still the way they make this big move is very, very relevant and significant because the sun sheds light on everything it conjuncts with. It also combusts it a little bit. So Pluto's effect on Aquarius is going to be seen and, of course, felt as it happens very, very intensely and profoundly. Now, this may not be a totally new pattern because Pluto did enter, sorry, very, very briefly in the sign of Aquarius in the year 2023, so last year, but it only stayed there for a couple of months, retrograding back into Capricorn, of course, finishing a job. So we can say that in 2023, Pluto stayed more and, let's say, worked more with Capricorn than Aquarius. This year is going to be the opposite of this because Pluto is entering into the sign of Aquarius, let's say for good, for the next 20-21 years. Yet it will exit retrograde back into Capricorn, but only to that 29 degrees, briefly for a short period, starting from the summer and in autumn, and that's it. Afterwards, when it will go direct, it will permanently move into the sign of Capricorn, sorry, the sign of Aquarius. So it will start in a very, very serious manner, in a very concentrated, singular, focused manner to do its job, to have its effect on the sign of Aquarius. But of course, Pluto's long-term effect is a totally different story. I'm not going to speak about it in this horoscope because it would take so very much time and there is so much that needs to be said. But so very many astrologers out there have special videos about Pluto in Aquarius. I might have one as well. I can't really remember. But if you'd like to hear my take on it, just comment below and I'm gonna create a special video just about the big themes of Pluto in Aquarius, if there is interest. But this week, it's actually about the immediate effect, much more than the long-term effect, especially because the conjunction with the sun means a gateway of foresight. It will reveal its intent. Of course, let's understand intent very symbolically because Pluto is not a person in that sense, but it will reveal to us, it will show us, it will help us anticipate both its immediate effects but also long-term effects. And this energy, the glyph of Aquarius, the two waves, one on top of each other, but they're not really connected. So this means the very nuanced Aquarian duality, contradiction, dichotomy. It really depends on how we look at it, but the two is still standing. So chances are it is going to be as equally as important, intense, and significant, both collectively speaking. Aquarius is everyone, all of us, humanity interconnected, but also the individual. So it is going to be very significant, even if in a totally different way, both for the collective and the individual. And what do I mean by this? Well, whatever happens in the collective, well, that's very simple. All of us are either passively or more actively affected by it. But how this plays out in our individual lives might be something very, very, very specific to us personally. It might not have, in a clear, visible way, all that much to do with the collective expression. But what is significant is that it's gonna feel quite intense. And this is like a power aspect, Pluto. So it's gonna be about power. But before we get there, before we get to the end of the week, the other celestial conversations and, of course, the other planets are almost like in a preparation mode, in a mode where they are welcoming this massive shift. And with this being said, let us take a look at exactly that, how the events of the week before we reach the 21st of January are gonna play out. So I already shared my screen. We are on the 15th of January here. And on the 15th of January, on the beginning of the week, Mercury already made a very important move. Mercury still being in shadow, so it is still wrapping up its retrograde, big themes and lessons and all of that. So naturally, especially at the beginning of the week, we're gonna be feeling this quite strongly, that we're wrapping up our own personal Mercury retrograde themes in our lives. But entering into the sign of Capricorn in itself gives a totally different feeling, where we are all that much focused on the practical, on the real, on the down to earth material, etc., etc. Why? It's not just Mercury, it's also Mars. And as I say, at the beginning of the week, Pluto and the Sun are still in Capricorn. So Capricorn is really, really packed with planets and also dwarf planets. We have their Ixion, Quaoar, and if I'm not mistaken, asteroid Pholus. Those, of course, represent a minor influence, but they're there. And needless to say, Ixion, dwarf planet Ixion, and I do believe that it entered Capricorn not so long ago. If I'm not mistaken, it was in 2021. If I'm not very sure about this, and I don't really want to look this up now, but something around that time, and we could feel its effect very, very, very soon after. What does Ixion do in Capricorn? Reveal everything Capricornian in nature, which is basically not okay, not working, not safe and sound, not very well thought out, which doesn't go for everyone, like laws, rules, regulations, discrimination, political corruption, the corruption and the deeply corrupted and aggressively capitalistic mindset of everyone and everything that is a part of this Capricorn. I don't mean people with Capricorn Sun or Capricorn energy personally speaking. This is not personal. This is where humanity's Capricorn expression, the big institutions in that sense. So the targets are the institutions, not really the people. But Ixion started to really, really, really reveal everything that was very difficult to look at before. So Ixion is going to be activated, was activated by Mars, and is going to be again activated by Mercury. So the big theme of political corruption, who the bad guy is, who the thief, because ultimately, who the thief, the liar, the aggressor, etc., is, that's going to be revealed. And that energy can feel quite personal if certain people have that in their karma, where they actually done all of that. But anyway, this doesn't matter because this is more like a background energy, and we'll be getting much more of that for many years to come. But this Capricorn segment in the sky is so very, very packed. So you can imagine that wherever this Capricorn falls into our personal charts, personal lives, we're going to feel a very strong intensity here, but also the intensity that will be, how should I say, relieved by the energy shift, because Sun and Pluto are going to move further on into Aquarius. And needless to say, both Mars and Mercury, then Venus, in their own timing, are going to be following Pluto's and the Sun's course, of course. So at the beginning of the week, we just feel this strange shift where Mercury is already in the sign of Capricorn, inviting us to truly wrap up our own Mercury retrograde themes in our lives based on everything that we have, we acquired, or we thought of, or, achieved until, over the course of the time when this Mercury retrograde started. So December last year to the present moment. And chances are solutions, plans, the bigger picture, figuring things out, and also powerful disillusionment and reality check, which served our greatest good, was part of these past weeks in all of our lives, but also powerful solutions, because Mercury conversed when it was in the sign of Sagittarius in supreme harmony with Aries and the nodes of the moon, which means we understood finally what it is that we need to think, believe Sagittarius, what law, justice, legislation, legal system means for us in order for us to have the type of, let's say, life or modus vivendi that is meant for us personally. Now, when Mercury moves into the sign of Capricorn and advances a little bit more, it will rehold for the third and final time its trine with Jupiter. And that is absolutely beautiful and wonderful, because it gives so much solution and practical solution, or justice, or equilibrium, or the right mindset, the right attitude, the right way of thinking, or a lot of advice, or any kind of help from people who are, let's say, maybe more powerful, more skilled, more knowledgeable than us, the symbolism of Capricorn. So that energy is going to be one of the most positive highlights of the week. But the moon, also at the very end, beginning of the week, conjuncts Neptune. And that's very, very important, because on one hand, the moon loves being in the sign of Pisces. And whenever the moon in any given situation conjuncts Neptune, that means the realm of the unconscious, the mystical, the inner world becomes that much more accessible. It may represent visions, very, very vivid and intense, prophetic almost dreams. This is when psychologically, internally, and even spiritually, this moon conjunct Neptune is preparing us for what is about to come. It simply crystallizes our own connection with spirit and what our deepest faith, but also what our relationship with the deepest self means to us personally. Because when Pluto moves into Aquarius along with the sun, one of the requirements for us to embrace that energy and make really, really good use to it is that we need to feel and be aligned with our most authentic inner truth, who we are not, who it is that we never ever want to become, and who it is that we aspire to become. These things might seem so, I don't know, maybe superficial in that sense, because these are just big philosophic thoughts that every person naturally has. Well, absolutely, every person naturally has, but usually those are not very much rooted in the most, how should I say, authentic inner truth, because they are conditioned usually. The sun, we must not forget, is the conditioned self. So maybe it's just 50% how what we want to generate and shed light on, project onto the world and others. The other 50% is what we picked up, how whatever others and the world conditioned us personally. So you know what I mean? And it is with that conditioning that we must work, and we actually know we must not work anymore, because this is exactly the period. This is the closing period of that. This is where we had a lot of time, especially these past couple of years, when we had very powerful eclipses to support that, especially eclipses with the South Node in Scorpio, to release that which we are no longer, that which no longer resonates, and which we no longer can get in tune with, in touch with, deep within ourselves. And it was irrelevant how very strongly it resonated at another time in our lives. What really matters is who we are right now. And of course, the North Node in the sign of Aries, especially when it was tightly conjunct Aries, and Pluto squared all of this energy. So this is 2023 already, especially the summer. That was also a period when we were blocked externally. We had stagnations and blockages and almost like deep freezes in our lives, because all of the major planets were retrograde. And our job was, because everything was blocked, we couldn't do all that much. But our job was to actually process our most authentic inner truth, identity, etc., etc. And based on that, to figure out our own personal North Node, as in where do we want to get in the future? What do we want to do? What do we want to initiate? What does sovereignty, independence, individuality mean for us personally? And what do we do with all those things, or people, or energies, or institutions who take that away from us, who threaten that, who block that out? So that was the big theme that we had to process. And now this week, as I said earlier, the study period is over. Whatever it is within us, whatever decanted and distilled within us, that's what we have to work with, and that's what we can rely upon. And this Neptune and Moon conjunction is going to show us exactly that. It is going to re-evoke, but in Neptunian ways, who it is that we are: dreams, feelings, nostalgia, jumping back in time to the most relevant moments, or whatever it is that we lived that really shaped and formed our identity in this incarnation. So yeah, expect all of that to happen. But at the same time, Venus holds a quincunx with Uranus. Venus in the sign of Sagittarius, and Uranus in Venus's home sign of Taurus. So this energy can create a bit of awkwardness. This energy can create unexpected events that disturb us, disrupt us, that make us think twice. And it can also bring in our lives, for example, unexpected attractions for Venus in the sign of Sagittarius. The sign of, let's say, the foreigner, where an archetype maybe, or a person who has a very exotic personality compared to us, of course, may just like this pop up in our lives and in a way confuse us emotionally, or confuse our greatest ideologies, etc., etc. But ultimately, this is also a yod formation, so a finger of God, because the south node in the sign of Libra also points to this Uranus. And why is this important? Because Venus rules both Taurus and Libra. So Venus's role here and importance is really, really highlighted. So this can be material energy, money, currency, resources, values. Both Taurus and Venus support this. This can mean, for example, unexpected opportunities, requests, or anything coming from, let's say, abroad or internet or something which is not necessarily local. And it's a quincunx, it's a finger of God. It may feel very fated, but this is where you need to process this energy to do something with it. Even if it's fated, sometimes the best choice is to postpone it, delay it, and say, well, right now I am working on something else, something very important for myself. Thank you for the opportunity, but I can't accept it right now. But it can go the other way, where you're so determined. Of course you are. Mercury, Mars, Sun in Capricorn, determination, ambition, striking the iron while it's glowing, while it's hot, to shape and fold our futures or what we want to do. And out of nowhere, something comes into our lives. And maybe that was the right thing to do after very, very careful analysis, maybe to accept it, to take it, to embrace that opportunity. And on the other hand, Uranus and the moon, but the moon very, very briefly, before it conjuncts Neptune, also hold the same quincunx, but this time the finger of God is pointing to the south node in Libra. And this is, how should I say? No matter how an energy from the past, South Node in Libra, especially relationship energy, contractual energy, any kind of one-on-one alliance request, or an ex, for example, but that ex may not be only romantic. It can be as ex-job, ex-boss, ex-colleague, ex-best friend, ex-associate, ex-something, comes into your life unexpectedly and dishes out something. And what do? This is where you have to process. A moon and Neptune, how did this play out in the past? Uranus in the sign of Taurus. What does this opportunity mean in the present context? And then make a decision. But with the South Node in the sign of Libra, chances are we say that, no, we played this, we've seen this pattern before, and we no longer want it because we are not the same person. Or simply said, I needed that opportunity, help, or whatever at that time in the past. Right now, even if it's too good to be true or it comes with great ease, I don't want it because I'm not the same person anymore. So keep in mind that these two yods can really confuse us, and it may seem that the universe is playing games with us, but actually these are just meant to for the final time reinforce our major life lessons and our major conclusions of our own wisdom that we do need to be, working with very strongly, because it is that wisdom that goes hand in hand with the powerful, ambitious, motivational Capricorn energy that gets things done for real. So on the 16th, moving on, we have the Sun holding an exact sextile with Neptune. Now, this is exactly what I said earlier. We have Mars, Mercury in Capricorn, of course, Sun and Pluto still there at the beginning of the week. So the ambition, let's do it. Work, determination. I want to invest energy. I want to do this. I want to complete this. I want to show what I can do. So again, all throughout the week, this and actually all throughout Mars staying Capricorn, work, ambition, and pumping energy into what is very important to us is going to be highlighted. Just that maybe when Mars will start squaring the nodes of the moon, and first Chiron and then the nodes of the moon, that might be a moment when we need to take a breather and, readapt, readjust the inner energy uses, if you know what I mean. But the overall tone of having to keep on going strong on what we need to accomplish in ourselves, career-wise, professionally, work, physical life, or whatever area of life, doesn't matter, but we need the energy input. Now, the Sun sextile Neptune comes as a massive blessing to that, where hope, dreams, a touch of magic, fantasy, alchemy, the right attitude can do wonders. Collaboration, where two people join forces, two hearts, two, let's say, dreams, two fantasies, two sources of faith and magic are definitely much better than one. So this aspect is both wonderful in a very down-to-earth physical way for work, for speculations, for collaborations, wonderful energy for artists or everyone who works with the human element, especially from a psychological or motivational perspective. But it's also good from a non-physical, metaphysical way, powerful healing energy. And this is where whatever it is that we see, whatever it is that we become aware of, Sun, especially Sun very close to Pluto, it's already like an active conjunction, just that it's not very tight. So Pluto is already in the picture very strongly. So this aspect shows us where great power lies in where great power lies in our lives, in our spheres, let's say, and sextile Neptune using that is gonna get us a long way. It's helpful in any way, shape, and form. Then we move on to the 18th, when we have finally Mercury sextiling Saturn. Now this is beautiful, and this is like truly um like the divine lending us a hand, because this energy is absolutely wonderful to stabilize the mind, because that's what Saturn does. Saturn is the restrictive principle in the sign of Pisces. Well, it restricts exactly the wishy-washiness, the fog mind, the permanent high and dream state of Pisces, or the permanent self-victimization, whatever energy is expressed. So it's absolutely wonderful because it stabilizes us. It allows us not only to have brief moments when we look at the reality check, it actually allows us to stay in reality, but not in a way where we cannot use non-reality, as in the Piscean expression. This is a wonderful and really, really supportive aspect, good for poetry, music, creativity. Needless to say that Mercury is also conjunct Quaoar, dance, music, sacred vibrations, your natural tone of your body, if that makes sense to some people, that comes as a massive, massive help. And this is where it's also good for anything creative, anything creational, artistic or not. Mercury in Capricorn, it can be like improvising. I need to fix my car or whatever because I cannot afford a specialist. And this is where slowly and surely you do it, maybe even better than the specialist. And there is a lot of divine inspiration helping you with this Saturn in the sign of Pisces. This is where your unconscious is like the tooth fairy, like the fairy godmother, what I wanted to say, who helps you from the shadows. So it is absolutely wonderful. But something that I find even more wonderful a tiny bit is that at the same time, Mercury holds a supremely harmonious trine with Jupiter and the moon. Of course, the moon there very briefly, but with Jupiter, this is also an earth energy. And going back just a little bit to Saturn, Saturn rules Capricorn. So it's a really, how should I say, it's a really, really supported, strong, muscle, psychological muscle type of sextile. But then the trine is free flowing. And with the moon, this is where your emotions, the power of your soul is there as well. Not just your greatest principles, Jupiter, your belief, your values, but soul, body, mind, everything is there, mind, Mercury. This may represent a moment of great, great, great alignment when something beautiful is reflected back at you. This aspect is really good for generosity, receiving gifts, not maybe not unconditionally. Saturn in Pisces, not unconditionally, for something that you have done, for your work, for your sacrifice, for your words, for your attitude, for something that you have done, and that reflects back to you in a miraculous or infinitely loving or in a way which really highlights your value and it makes you happy. But translate this into something very practical, especially at work, in your career, relationship with your superiors, bosses, parent, father figure, husband. So something really beautiful basically reflects back at you. So, and at this time, you can see the sun is becoming very, very tightly conjunct Pluto. So again, where the power lies in our lives becomes more and more and more and more evident. And we feel this power. We strongly sense it. So that is really, really beautiful and wonderful aspect. But we must not forget all of this empowerment, all of this celestial support is preparing us for the Pluto and Sun into Aquarius moment. And it's not just the Pluto and Sun activating Aquarius, but very soon after, on one hand, there is going to be a full moon in Leo on the 25th. That's important because Leo is the opposite sign of Aquarius. So it impacts and activates Aquarius in its own way. On the 27th, however, the ruler of Aquarius, Uranus, goes direct. Of course, not really, because it stands still in the sky for a few good days and even weeks, but the energy shift, it's gonna act, it's almost like the all of the spotlights of the heavens are on Aquarius. And I'm gonna speak about this in greater detail as we get to the 21st, because yeah. But on the 19th, we still have something very important where Venus getting close to the galactic center. And before I just need to mention, just look back in the past few weeks, from the beginning of December, when Mercury was here, the Sun was here, Mars was here, of course. And as all those planets individually held this square with Neptune, if you watched the internet or certain news, unidentified flying objects and the whole circus with that in America and the United States started to get like serious. There are court hearings and all of that. Now, I'm not saying that that's real or not, or it has any relevance. I'm just saying how beautifully the expression of Neptune, is it true or not? Or what is it? Because what we know is only that it's not natural. You know what I mean? That is the only thing that we know, that those things and are not natural. But then what is it? And courts of justice and hearing, those are all Sagittarius law, the courts of justice. So you see how the theme played out. Now with Venus having her turn to square Neptune, now that's where we will see a Venusian effect to this. Financial value, or Venus and Neptune are each other's octaves. What that means in collective feeling, emotion. Do we love it or do we hate it? Or how do we feel about it? You know what I mean? But this can also have very individual expressions, which of course have nothing to do with whatever played out in the world, where the theme is, do I love it? Or Neptune square Venus can represent where Venus in the sign of Sagittarius, so idealism. You love the idea, you love the principle, you love something how it is in philosophy, but then Neptune comes in Pisces. It's actually not a reality check, it's the opposite of the reality check, where Neptune can show you all the reasons why that ideal is not good. So, you know what I mean? This is where you just get confused more and more and more. Do I love it or don't I love it? It doesn't matter if it's a person, a job, anything, or even something internal. Do I love this about myself or not really? And chances are the answer doesn't matter all that much, because what this celestial conversation wants to show us is where we still have very, very strong doubts. And it is okay not to know our truth and answer, because if we do not know it, it means we still need to live things to make sense of it. So this is a really good moment of self-reflection when the universe highlights what we are not fully sure of, and it's absolutely okay. We don't have to be. It's okay if we don't know if I love him or not, because that means he still needs to prove himself or whatever. You know what I mean? If it's a person. If it's not a person, it's the same thing. Job, idea, a plan, person, whatever. We still need to live and process it. However, the Venus and Neptune square may be a bit tense and wishy-washy and confusing, but the Mercury-Jupiter trine again comes as a saving grace. Why? Because Jupiter is in Venus's home sign of Taurus. At that moment, the moon is conjunct Uranus. So an epiphany, something erupts from us feeling wise, emotion wise, and maybe that eruption, because you keep in mind this conjunction of Uranus and the moon still quincunxes the south node in Libra. So old relationship patterns, I must process, whatever this Neptune Venus confusion is, not through the lens, not through the wisdom, not through the experiences of the past contracts, relationships, or what other people basically taught me, showed me, conditioned me, but I must judge all of this situation through a totally new lens, through the lens of the North Node in the sign of Aries. So asking my innermost core what resonates or not, and what is aligned with my purposes, sovereignty, most healthy self-worth, and what is not. Because chances are it doesn't matter if something like a person comes with great love, with and how useful that may, how much we once wanted the love of that person. This is just an example. We changed. So they may come with an abundance of love and embrace or whatever, and we may say, I'm so very sorry, I'm no longer that same. I don't need it anymore. Because the person who I am now does not need that type of love or doesn't need who you are now. No hard feelings, absolutely, but it is what it is. And it can be vice versa, where we finally figured out that, oh, I'm in love with this person. Yes, I'm sure of my feelings, finally. And we go to that person and surprise, surprise, I'm sorry, but I don't need you anymore. And that's absolutely fine. It may cause a slight Uranus moon conjunction effect, as in our feelings burst forth, and Neptune square Venus, tears, releasing tears, cleansing tears, tears of acknowledgement that, yeah, this is the situation. But whatever we decide, pro or con, it is going to be rooted in deep wisdom. Very, very, very deep wisdom. So do not be afraid of this quincunx, and do not afraid to say no or yes, as long as it's deeply rooted in your inner truth. And what is not rooted in your inner truth, that's also wonderful, because you're getting there by living the possibilities. Venus square Neptune. But of course, it may feel a bit heavy, like a mini heartbreak, like a disillusionment, like my truth is that I don't love it, don't believe in it, or etc., etc. But this is a natural part. And you can imagine, as I said earlier, Mercury, Sun, and Mars, both, all of them held the same square. They were in Venus's position. And now Venus, in a way, completes this cycle. So you can imagine that for a lot of individuals, this is the final moment of disillusionment, where spirituality does not equal religion. They get disillusioned by the institutionalization of spirituality and thought and feeling and connection with the divine, and they embrace their freedom. And we will see that playing out on the world stage as well. Now we get to the 20th and the 21st, and this is important. So at least where I live, because I live in Romania, where in your part of the world, the hour and the exact timing may be slightly different. But you see, this is when we have, by the degree, the Pluto and Sun conjunction. And this conjunction is so unusual because it perfects both in Capricorn and Aquarius. So, and at the moment, you see, this is where the exact conjunction happens, well, technically it's Aquarius, but we can actually say that it's a cusp because it's actually between the two signs. So this Pluto meeting the Sun, the revelatory, the combustion effect goes both for Capricorn and Aquarius simultaneously. So what does this mean? Well, first of all, it means that the Sun moves into Aquarius. So I'm wishing a very, very happy birthday period for all Aquarian natives. But on the other hand, it means that the major elements that Aquarius rules in the world, in our lives, in any way, shape, and form, are gonna be really, really highlighted and in a very relevant and in a very, very, very significant way. Because when Pluto enters into a sign and that's zero critical, 0 degree, that is what it does. It gives power to everything what that sign means in existence. Internal, external, symbolic, concrete, whatever. Everything, every energy that has to do with it, that sign is almost like when you take a marker and highlight something, a very important phrase in a book. That so we are going to be feeling the Aquarian energies, but also the energetic Capricorn energies strongly at the same time. Energetic Capricorn energy, well, that's not all that beautiful, so to speak, because as I said, the corruption, uh, what kind of rules and what kind of authority that something else has over us can we not accept? This is where what we cannot accept becomes not just crystal clear, but almost like a necessity. You know what I mean? So that represents the deconstruction of Capricorn, another big milestone. So protests, uprising, civil war, internal struggle and strife within countries and nations and governments, and most importantly, massive political battles from within. You know, this might not be the classic case where the left is in a permanent struggle and fight with the right. That is nothing new. That I'm not saying that that is not going to be the case, but this is where the left is severely attacked by the left from within the left. You know what I mean? And the right the same. So it's going to be very, very, very complicated. However, the same energy will highlight 0 degrees of Aquarius. So the future, human interconnectedness, whatever it is that we need to embrace both individually and collectively, and this actually is need to embrace, need in the sense that we don't have any other choice because the future is here and that's it. And this energy also builds on and activates, if you remember, the 21st of December 2020, when Saturn and Jupiter opened the Great Conjunction at that 0 degrees of Aquarius, and they invited all of us into the new paradigm, where before, for the last 200 years, except one, most great conjunctions happened in earth signs. The last one was in Taurus in the year 2000. Now, this new great conjunction in air sign not just opened a totally new cycle, so an air cycle, but it will keep on having the great conjunctions for the next 200 years, predominantly in air signs. So you can imagine this emphasizes the element of thought, the element of intellect, the element of the creational power of words, of thoughts, of thinking, of our inner energy. But when I say our inner energy, right now I'm actually saying it in a very literal, physical sense, because what creates is actually the measurable. So this isn't like fantasy. Electronic energy impulses running in our nerves, in our brain, in our nervous system. That becomes something real. And like this isn't even an analogy. The electrical impulses running in my own brain become this horoscope, and you listen to it, it becomes real. So this is going to be so very amplified and highlighted, because this is one of our greatest powers, when just energy becomes something real. And surprise, surprise, this is also the principle of the universe. This is also an eternal cosmic principle. So we are stepping into a new era where creation does not only mean something earthly, as in creation, you have to take the paintbrush and whatever and paint it, create it, draw it, because otherwise it will only exist in your head. Now, believe it or not, because I know what I'm about to say is a bit unbelievable, we will no longer need the physical element. Not that it is not needed, the physical element will just come on its own. If the mental element is strong enough, and this is where Leo comes into play, the heart needs to oppose the mind, you know? The heart needs to oppose our highest thoughts. Why? Because that opposition isn't negative, it's actually an alignment with our love, with our highest and most sacred principles that stem from our hearts. And on the other hand, from a maybe not necessarily empirical perspective, but from any other perspective, spiritual, psychological, whatever, the heart, even physically speaking, is much more intelligent than the mind, even the brain. But this isn't like intelligence where like a computer we do calculations, because that's not intelligence, that's a function. Intelligent in a way that it can bring so much wisdom, truth, and clear sight to everything. So we will need Leo, and Pluto entering in the sign of Aquarius along with the sun ruling Leo, will actually highlight the massive importance of love, passion, uh, looking at life from the perspective of a child with a certain kind of innocence, etc., etc. That also is part of the deal. But what it will mostly do for us individually, well, again, remember that 21st December 2020, all of us had a massive opening, maybe not necessarily on that day, but we had a lot of years to figure out our new and more future-oriented principles, way of thinking, worldview, our hopes, our dreams, our ideals, what kind of people and souls and minds would we want to connect with, and what no longer is part of our lives. Pluto conjunct Sun in Capricorn, that's Capricorn segment. What kind of rituals will we eliminate from our lives? May they be personal, religious, or whatever. Certain rituals and certain Saturnian elements in our lives are changed forever, as in they are archived. They can no longer come with us into the future, into our personal future. And this is a very powerful psychological energy, because we need to allow certain freedom within our behavior and vanquish or banish other type of behavior, which is just like a reminiscence of the past, to no longer have power over us. So I'm not saying that all of this complex energy is gonna unfold on the 20th, 21st, and there it is. But that's when this is like a gateway, when we all of us enter into this. Of course, on our own timing, but what is not individual, what is not our own timing, is that the past will truly be the past. As in, there is no way going back. No way like doing things like we used to do in the past and it worked. And if this energy, for example, affects your job, your profession, your sixth house, let's say, it's not easy. It's so difficult because you're put in the place of an inventor. However you used to do it, it doesn't work anymore, but there is no guideline, so you have to invent it. You have to use your Uranus very, very strongly. But as I said, this energy just prepares us for when Uranus goes direct and after. Because after Uranus went direct, and 2 days before there's a full moon in Leo, that's when it's really, 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 really on. And that full moon in Leo will hold an aspect with Saturn, because this full moon is going to take place at 5 degrees of Leo, and Saturn is still, and even it's going to be at that time roughly around still 5 degrees of Leo, you know what I mean? So it's really, really not an easy energy, because that full moon in Leo is going to just dish out everything that we are yet needing to accomplish to be aligned with our heart space, our true innocence, our passion. And that means everything that stops and blocks Saturn, our passion, is going to also, be dished out there. But because this is a weird aspect, chances are everything that we never even suspected that is cutting off our passion from our lives is going to be revealed. Surprise, surprise. Especially certain things that we might not have ever even thought of the correlation and the connection. Now, let me give you an example. And this is like a really inappropriate example, because there might be people for whom the opposite is true. But there's a die down in your creativity, burnout, etc., etc. And you see all the logical reasons. And then, surprise, surprise, that full moon dishes out to you that also one of the biggest reasons is that you're not doing like a certain type of physical exercise, which for your being is necessary. Saturn, physical exercise. Pisces, where you don't do it, and Pisces is the unconscious. And it will become clear to you that if you introduce like some kind of physicality in your life, exercise, yoga, dance, whatever, your creative centers will immediately spark up. But I can give you other examples. For others is breathing. For others, for example, is sexual energy. Some people don't have their creative centers very active, or they feel this burnout, or that their creative energy is blocked because they, like, I don't want to word this in an inappropriate way, they use their creative energies in a totally different, much more fun way, you know what I mean? While for others, the total of Pisces, the dichotomous nature, the total opposite, they keep in a sterile. Sorry, my microphone, but this happens to me on every single Sunday, so yeah. So other people keep themselves in a sterile bubble as a monk, and their respective chakra just closes off. It doesn't exist. You know, it's absolutely okay to live life in a sacred way, but not really when your own karmic specifics say don't do this over again because you did that 10 million times in all of your previous incarnation. Just stop it and start living. No, this is where sometimes purity and sacredness as such can be a massive blockage, like a prison, where the divine would not intend that again for the soul. For and I worked with so many people like this, where why is my life not working when I'm so aligned with the spirit? I'm pure, and that's why, because the spirit doesn't need you to do this over again. You're in this incarnation to enjoy yourself, or you know what, everything that you couldn't live in other incarnations. So you know what I mean. But again, this is what it will mean to us specifically, individually. So all of us will need to figure out that full moon. But that, of course, is the theme of the another horoscope. And I would like to leave it at this, where the essence is that the Sun and Pluto conjunction is really, really gonna show us what we have done and how we change, we evolve in these past couple of years, starting from the 21 December 2020. But on the other hand, it also reveals to us how and what our future can mean to us, both individually and collectively, and where our power lies, but also where our powerlessness lies, and what we need to bring to the table on a heart level, on a love level, on a sensual level, on a creativity level, on an innocent level, in order to balance out this massive mental energy shift that is going to be like that for the next 20 years. So the mental sphere, Aquarius, the higher thinking, is going to be active excessively. Now, there is also a negative side to this, but I really, really don't want to include that in this present horoscope, because it will be our jobs for the next 20 years to make sure that the negative and the gloomy and doomy side of Pluto in Aquarius does not influence our world, and collectively, of course, as much as it can, because you know, Pluto being in Aquarius kind of is a rather darker energy for the youth, Leo, you know, the opposite sign. So the youth will really, really, really have to start fighting their battles with the self, with the darker self, with the fatalistic self, with the self which doesn't know what life is because they only lived in virtual reality. Now, the real self will not be imprisoned like that and will start to fight with the mind. So you can imagine that that will mean the need for a lot of support, the need for a lot of love, especially for the youth, because they don't know what love is, and they don't even know how to feel love because they didn't really get it. Why? Because all of us, humanity as a collective, was washed over by the conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter in 2000 in the sign of Taurus, where that very conjunction is going to be reactivated by the Uranus and Jupiter conjunction upcoming around the 19th or 21st of April this year. So it's going to be a really, really intense and interesting period. But the essence is that Aquarius truly represents hopes, dreams, elevated emotion and thought, making everything okay for everyone. You know, the realizations of hopes. In tarot, it is the star card. So this is what we should be focusing on, especially when Pluto activates that zero critical degree of Aquarius, because that is truly the future. So thank you, everyone. Don't forget, if you want to listen to my take on Pluto's transit in Aquarius, just drop a comment and I'm going to create that video. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being here, and wishing everyone a really, really empowered week where you go and, as a joke, slay, in that sense. Thank you again. Until next time. Bye for now.